So I'm joined this evening with good friend and distant cousin Brian Nugent, esteemed author of Marian Apparitions in Ireland, this book that I've been blogging about before, The Tomb Babies, very in-depth study. And Brian has been doing a lot of work and has some incredible interviews lately. And today we were just back and forth because I was asking about this book, The Green Cockatrice, which is a book that both of us had. And Brian, you've done the movie Shakespeare Was Irish, linking him to William Nugent of Delvin. And in your video, you touched on the Eucharistic miracle of St. Mary's in Delvin, which I had never heard about, which kind of got my attention. Could you just, the little bit that you know about it, could you just mention it and how you found out about it, and then the other bits that we were going to talk about the Nugent Capuchins.
Yeah, you were asking about the green cockatrice and the apparition in Dublin.
Was it an apparition or a Eucharistic miracle in Delvin in St.
Well,
Mary's?
well, well, I suppose you'd call it a Eucharistic miracle. Yeah, I mean, you could call either thing like that. It was another Eucharistic miracle that's also what you might call an apparition.
Okay.
So in that, you just have that entry in a French language book. And I found that it's not referred to in any other book anywhere. And but you're better at the French than I am. So if you can bring it up, you translate it better than me. But it was simply that the two barons, the Baron of Delvin and his brother, the Baron of Screen, viewed what seemed to be a Eucharistic miracle in the hands of the priest as he's given out Holy Communion.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
I never heard about this. This is like something completely new to me.
well, yeah, it's new to me as well, and there's a lot of work has been done. Of course, you have the Green Cockatrice on William Nugent, who's there, and nobody else found this reference. But I found it just searching on the internet. This idea, the way you can search old books and Google books and whatever, you can actually do it by date. And I was often
Oh,
looking for Nugent, and then it occurred to me I should look up Nugent in the different languages. So I looked
yeah.
it up, whatever I had for French, and then I tripped across that, and it's as I say, it's nowhere else. You won't find it anywhere. You see, the significant thing about this is that the St Mary's in Delvin, of course, is an old traditional Catholic church, and virtually all of the old churches of Ireland went Protestant. All the buildings are now Protestant. They're owned by the Anglicans. So at some point between, say, 1570 something and 1620, that becomes an Anglican church, presumably, because they all become Anglican churches. So, of course, there's great significance in a Eucharistic miracle occurring in what would otherwise become an Anglican church. It's showing that there is such a thing as transubstantiation. So that's the
Yeah.
significance.
Yeah. That is, I mean, Brian, when you think about it, the history that you're digging up, it is like we were fed all of this because I remember as a child, my uncle would bring me into St. Mary's in Delvin and tell me all the history and stuff. And it would just go over my head. And I'd just say, yeah, okay, yeah, this is Nugent, whatever. I mean, kids, we don't feel it, but I vividly remember being brought into that. Well, it's derelict now. There's no roof on it, but it's beside Delvin Castle. And it's only years later that because we were my grandfather was born 10 minutes behind Delvin Castle on the Delvin at Boy Road, Cronestown, just
Yeah,
behind there, Clonmorrell. And so,
yeah,
and his father was born there, and his grandfather, great grandfather, great great grandfather. But this is what we were told. Um, but when you mentioned the Eucharistic miracle there, and then you're connecting it with the Anglicanization of the churches, it does speak something of what was happening at that time. Because if I'm not mistaken, William Nugent ended up in Rome in the court of Gregory the 13th, right? Pope Gregory the 13th.
yeah. He was in Rome, yeah, and he became fluent in Italian. And
Yeah.
we know this because there's a number of letters written by him with his colleague Brian Nugent in the Vatican Art House in Italian. They were published by a fellow called Theiner, Theineur, who's a cardinal who published a lot of the stuff from the Vatican Archives about the 1870s, that kind of thing. So they partially published the letters then, and there's a fuller edition in one of the Irish journals of about the 1930s. So
Wow.
yeah, he was fluent in Italian, and then there's a specific reference that he was a great Italian poet as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, he was in Rome. That's true. Yeah.
But his son Richard Nugent, who wrote Cynthia, he also spoke Italian.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure, but no. Sorry. There is some Italian in that book. Yes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there's an Italian poem. But in
Yeah.
my opinion, that's written by the compiler of the poem
Oh,
after
okay.
the author died. So it's William again. That's his poem, in my opinion. That's his poem in Italian, because you wouldn't get
Yeah.
too many others that are fluent Italian. Yeah. So
Fascinating.
it is. You see, yeah. But the other thing about it is that both of them, the two brothers, William Nugent and Christopher, were unbelievably Catholic figures. They were
Yes.
very, very committed for their entire lives. So maybe it was something that occurred a little earlier, maybe about 1570s. I couldn't tell you because there's no date on it. But if that occurred there, that's kind of the origin then maybe of their tremendous Catholicity, because
Yeah.
they both were very, very Catholic.
Yeah, because they rebelled. I mean, it's all in the book. They rebelled against the crown precisely over the faith. That the faith was being
Yeah,
destroyed. And I'd love to date that miracle in Mary's in Delvin. I would love to get a date,
yeah,
if we could, and maybe people looking at this video can help us get some more information.
yeah.
Because
Yeah, that wouldn't be easy to date because I've never seen any other reference to it, and I know a lot of those sources. But we do have other miracles as well. And
yeah, go
yeah,
on.
anyway, you're right. Yeah, so the other miracles. So you have then a Friar Lavalin Nugent, and I can see you accumulating some wonderful books there. But I'm telling you, a book that you would like is a biography of Friar Lavalin Nugent by F.X. Martin. F.X. Martin was a leading Irish historian, and he's actually the brother of Malachi Martin, which many of your viewers might have heard of, the author and all the rest of
Really?
it. He's his
Really?
brother, F.X. Martin. And oh yeah, 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 absolutely, yeah. And yeah, I attended some of his lectures in UCD back in the day. He lectured in UCD. He was a great historian. But he started
Oh,
off writing this thesis and later a book in the 1950s on Lavalin Nugent, who was a friar he was born and bred in Dysart, which is on the western shore of Lough Ennel, just south of Mullingar. And he founded the Capuchin mission to Ireland, but not just the one to Ireland, but it also involved England and Scotland. And then he was a key figure in the Capuchin push into Germany, into the Low Countries, into France, into northern Italy, and I think into Spain. It's truly incredible. The man is it's an awesome history. It's just flat out amazing. So that's the text if you want to do, the religious of the Nugents at that time. And he was just an amazing figure called Friar Nugent, the biography by F.X. Martin. Anyway, in that, there's a number of sources for the Capuchins. The main one is two books written by a fellow called Nicholas Archbold, who is very connected to Nugents anyway, the Archbolds. And he wrote two books in English, in manuscript now. And then there's a book in Latin, published in 1654 by a fellow called Robert O'Connell. So that's where he gets most of his sources, F.X. Martin. But it's interesting that there's a reference there to a Eucharistic miracle. It occurred in Cologne. Now, I think it probably would be possible to date that. I think there is a date on it. It might be about 1610-ish.
yeah.
So Friar Lavalin is holding up the Eucharist at the point in the Mass where where it becomes the body of our Lord. And the person in the audience saw our Lord on the Eucharist. And it became such a causa célèbre that there was a legal document taken from her and deposited in the archives in Cologne. And so that's stated by a witness at the time, meaning Nicholas Archbold. And then 30 years later, when Father O'Connell was writing his other work on the history of the Capuchins, by the way, Archbold wrote in English, but Father O'Connell wrote in Latin. He double checked it. He went to Cologne and spoke to the lady for whom it had appeared 30 years before, and she confirmed everything. So
Wow.
it is quite a serious
And
miracle.
was
Yeah,
that in Cologne Cathedral?
yeah,
Or
I
we
think
just
so. It was
okay.
in Cologne. It might have been Cologne Cathedral. but Friar Lavalin is associated, I think, with Cologne Cathedral and Chartres Cathedral in France.
Okay.
They, they,
Yeah.
they said that a portrait of his was in Chartres Cathedral. I was there, but I don't know what happened to the portrait. But he's really a big figure all across that period in the high heat of the Counter Reformation.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
was the cathedral. I'm not 100%. But that part of Germany, you see, is the cutting edge of the Counter Reformation because, of course, north of it, Protestant, south of it, Catholic. See, so that area and the Low Countries, the northern France, is the battleground for that, as well as
Wow.
Ireland. And he was the founder of the Capuchin mission to Ireland. But
Yeah.
but not just him. There are oodles of Capuchins, Nugents. So
Yeah.
so the Capuchins and then the Jesuits, so the two great orders of the kind of Reformation in general, and the Nugents are very involved in both in Ireland. So
Yeah.
anyway, I was just when you interrupted me there, I was actually working on that Latin book. It's very difficult to read. Now, the book was written in 1654, right? The manuscript of it is in Troyes in France, but it's on microfilm in the National Library of Ireland. But it's incredibly difficult to read thing, but it is anyway. And then a copy of that is in the Capuchin archives in Dublin. Now, I've got a copy of the microfilm, and I've gone to the Capuchin archives as well. And anyway, in the part where it gives an elegy of Friar Lavalin, but in fact, an awful lot of the book is about Friar Lavalin, it then describes another Capuchin, and his name is Father Peter Nugent. And Father Peter doesn't say where he's from. At least the bit that I've done so far, I think he might have been from Drogheda, but I'm not 100%. There was a Drogheda Nugent family that also had lands in Westmeath, and they commuted
Yeah.
between the two during the year. Anyway, this Father Peter founded the Capuchin monastery in Mullingar
Okay.
on a river known as the Silver Branch. It was a river that ran into Lough Owel from the south. That was there in Mullingar. Anyway, he got assistance from a number of the Nugents around about, from an Andrew Nugent. That it says in the text that Andrew Nugent was of Dun Superbi, Dunisusperbi. People have interpreted that as meaning Dunor, which is near Multifarnham. It might be. I'm not absolutely sure. Anyway, there was an Andrew Nugent up there who was very religious and all the rest of it. And then you had his aunt, Peter's aunt, Catherine Nugent, who was a tremendous supporter of the church, etc. So it goes into great detail on. Anyway, when she died, she was buried in Multifarnham. And I think it was at the funeral, but I haven't looked at it properly yet. He was there. Peter was there in the Franciscan friary in Multifarnham, and she appeared to him. That is, she just died. It was her funeral, and she appeared to him to say that the fires of purgatory are absolutely awful, but I only had to stay 2 hours there. So that because she was a tremendous, at all the devotions and yeah. So that's then three apparitions. You see, you have what happened to Friar Lavalin, what happened in St Mary's in Dublin, and that one in Multifarnham. So it's an interesting.
That is something else, because I remember as a kid we would be brought to Multifarnham, because you have in there is it Christopher Nugent, just in the church you have Christopher Nugent buried there, and of course there was Christophers in our family, and then my father was saying, oh, there was Jesuits in your family and you're named after one of them, and I said, who's who? I had no idea. It was only years later I said, oh, this Robert Nugent, he had quite an illustrious history, and he died a desperate death on an island off Galway. He was destitute. But all of these stories, you've picked my interest in it, and maybe it's something we can document out now for the other Irish. Because do you know what, Brian? And I'll say this to you. Reading the history of my family and their fight for the faith, they weren't, today we just give it up. We just, our family, reading the history of our family, today people just give up the faith as, yeah, oh, sure, look, I don't bother. These men gave up everything. house. They were separated from their family. They were separated from the island, the Ireland. They had to go Scotland, then off to Spain, then off to Italy, and in exile. We don't realize how much they gave up for the faith. It's when you think about it, you give up
Yeah,
everything.
and then you have the penal laws, that really did affect the Nugents. Like if you look at there's obviously huge surveys about 1640 land ownership of Ireland. So the Nugents would have about half Westmeath, about a third of Cavan, and Longford and Roscommon. So yeah, but there'd be about that in bits and pieces elsewhere, but it'd be about a third of Cavan, a third of Longford, and about half Westmeath, and a third of Roscommon. So it's unbelievable land ownership. But for the North Midlands, people, I think, greatly underestimate the amount of. And then if you compare that to after the penal laws, say 1729, I was just looking at there's about 5 tiny little ownership of by Nugent since 1829. There is actually a list. It's because they changed the electoral register, and so there's a register which shows those who own the land, and it's minuscule. It'd be like 1,000th of Westmeath would be owned by the Nugents at the end of the penal laws in 1829. Believe it or not, it's just incredible. They just lost everything with the penal laws. At least the Catholic Nugents did.
Yeah,
and that's the tradition in my family as well. That
yeah.
it was said by a relative of mine who's a barrister. He was talking to my grandfather, and my grandfather was explaining it was about the Palace family, which lived near Mount Nugent, and he was saying that our family. We gave our estates to one of the Protestant families nearby who were cousins of ours. And the idea being that after the penal laws, we get them back. But they applied for them back and didn't get them back. So that's the tradition.
Yeah, it's truly fun. I mean, maybe do you know what you're such a prolific writer. I've been using your Marian apparitions in Ireland book quite a lot, because it was you actually that said to me once, have you not been out to Cairns? And I said, no, I haven't been out to Cairns, and you were the one that kind of brought me out there. But you've been documenting and documenting and documenting different projects around Ireland, the Tomb Babies and other things, and maybe this is called now to drive awareness to Irish history. Like people aren't aware of the of the depths and the wealth of it.
Yeah. Well, you see, the other thing about it is that I think anyway that the Nugents in general, they always seem to retain this sense of leadership of the northwest corner of the Pale. They were the leaders of that area. They really were, and maybe they always had this political thing in them. I mean, because my father was very like that. Your uncle was like that. Very involved in politics. My grandfather was absolutely like that, and my great grandfather was apparently like that. And so I'm very interested also in politics. But the point is that actually you're not going to solve the political problems of Ireland until you solve the religious ones. And people think that's insane, but it isn't. They're tied up together. And like one thing I would say to people is that you learn from history. But you learn from authentic history. So let's look at the authentic history. I mean, we were in an awful trough as a country. About 1900, about 1890, it looked like we were just going to become anonymous as a part of the British Empire. Our independence, to just give up on it. And then things started to change. Obviously, we had a cultural revival, we had a political revival, and then we had, you might say, a military revival because we had to fight the War of Independence. And that's the way the history is taught now. Everybody knows about the cultural revival, Gaelic League and all the rest of it. Everybody knows about then the political revival, 1916, blah, 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 and hence the military revival. But in fact, if you read history books in Ireland from about the 1970s, I have an old copy, I don't know where it came from, it was in this house anyway, from the 1970s, and there they describe what I think is the authentic history. We had a religious revival first. We had a religious revival, then a cultural revival. It was actually used to be said that was the case, and it actually is the case. So, people who look at, say, the 1916 leaders, right, your Pearse, your Thomas MacDonagh, your Joseph Mary Plunkett, and they look upon how religious they were. That's well known. You have Pearse, he writes Isa Gone, Joseph Mary Plunkett, I see your blood upon the rose, Thomas MacDonagh, it's all the same. Massively religious figures. And what they say is, oh, there were people of their time, they were just religious like that. They weren't. That's completely inaccurate. They were far more religious than people at the time. So, they were caught up in the religious revival first. These people were motivated by the religious revival, and then you get the political revival, then you get I go around to a lot of things politically in Ireland, and I meet so many people from the Latin Mass community, and because there is a phenomenon. You have to get the religious revival first, and the other things will click in. So
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the key for modern Ireland. If you can get a religious revival first,
Yeah.
and you might say, well, what does it mean in practical terms? What are we saying? We're saying that people who lack religion, for them, it's all about, the mortgage. It's all about money in some shape or form, status, whatever. You're not likely to get them anyway to come out and, exactly how do you benefit financially or whatever by doing anything political, unless you become a TD or a minister, you don't. So what you're talking about, you're talking about, having a different set of what you think is right and wrong. When you become religious, for you it's getting to heaven, which is a different phenomenon. It's not about the money and the whatever. And when you have that in your head, you act different, and your whole value system changes. And when and also you become objective. This is the phenomenon that a lot of people miss. You
Yeah.
become objective because, well, when you've lost religion, your sense of right and wrong has to come from somewhere. So it'll come from the secular law. You'll be obsessed with laws and rules and regulations. Or it'll come from the Irish Times telling you should put your stuff in the recycle bin or whatever it's telling you. You're going to get right and wrong from the establishment in some shape or form. When you get right and wrong from religion, that aspect is gone, and then you're more objective. You see, well, I don't really think this is a good idea. You become more objective, and it's only in that vein that you can properly see what's happening in the country. So that's another phenomenon whereby you need a religious revival before you're going to get a political.
Yeah. And the religious revival we need, Brian, is a Catholic religious revival of Ireland. I mean, the Catholic faith is so interwoven and so deep in our culture, in our psyche, that we need to revive that encounter in Ireland. I mean, we both love the Latin Mass, and people know that. You've spent more time with it than me. But what kind of caught me, Brian, was the fact that my grandfather used to train altar servers in the house. So, they would go to my grandfather's house in Delvin, and, my grandfather would train them how to say the prayers in Latin to serve the Mass in Latin, right? And that's how my uncles were raised. That's how my grandfather. Now, my grandfather must have learned that from somewhere. He must have been taught by my great grandfather. And yet today, no, none of our children, none of our boys are ever taught a single word of Latin, much less how to actually stand beside a priest and serve a mass, stand at the altar and serve a mass, say the few prayers in Latin. I mean, we don't challenge them at all with the faith. It is dead. And it caught me. It really caught me. I mean, I made sure my son did serve a Latin mass. I said, look, you're going to, and the one thing I said to my son when I'm dead, I want a traditional Latin mass requiem. I don't care. I don't want any of this Novus Ordo funerals with the elegies and all. I said, over my dead body, you put me. I said, get me a tradition. And my kids know this. Because if they don't see that I'm convicted about, and Brian, it's not about dividing the church or rejecting Vatican II or saying the traditional Latin Mass people are better. This is about my family that stood, your family, our family stood for this for hundreds of years. We were willing to put our heads on the block for it. We did. I mean, as I said, William Nugent, we read William Nugent and the life of William Nugent. I mean, when you think about it, our ancestors were in Rome while the cupola of St. Peter's is being elevated. I mean, it even said it in the book. William Nugent is in Rome watching St. Peter's being constructed, you know, having left his land, his country, everything, you know, risking his life for the faith. And today we can't even teach our kids the basic tenets of the faith. It's bonkers, Brian. It's absolutely
Yeah,
bonkers.
it is. Yeah, yeah. Do you know, I wrote an article that I'm going to have it as a chapter in my latest book, or half a chapter. I call it an open letter to atheists. I'm trying to challenge atheists, and this comes into what you said. But so I said that in my experience, I just had an argument with an atheist. He's married into our family, into another Nugent, actually, Nugent, the married into our Nugent from Westmeath. But anyway, and I was just struck by the way he phrased it. He was kind of scientific, logical, reasonable, you know, and all the rest of it. And just one of the things that you will find atheists saying is that, you know, at the age of 7, they knew it was all rubbish. You know, at the age of 8, they knew. In other words, they had no real knowledge of the faith before they rejected it. Now, how logical is that? I mean, if I go up to a physicist and he tries to tell me that I spit an atom bomb and I'm going to explode this giant thing, I'm going to say to him, because I have a 7-year-old knowledge of physics, I'm going to tell him that's bunker. That's what they're doing, you know. So you're absolutely right. The vast majority of Irish have no knowledge of the faith at all worth talking about. They hardly know how to say the rosary, you know, and yet they reject it and they think that's logical, you know. So yeah, absolutely. And you know, it absolutely is the case that the Nugents did lose everything for the faith. I mean, at one level, I mean, I do the Nugents because I'm Nugent and you're Nugent, and obviously we're proud of them, you know. And there is a certain bias, like when you're doing your family history, you know, when you're proud of them or whatever. But actually, I have found as time has gone on that actually it is the case that it was remarkable. It's actually a lot more than you'd think. I've dig across more and more references, and it's just stunning, actually. It actually is the case. It's not an exaggeration. But I came across a reference, and again, these are very obscure references. Most people don't know about them. But there's a guy by the name of Slingsby, Slingsby. He was of a noble family in England, and he joined the Jesuits in Ireland about 1630s. And anyway, he was arrested. He was in Dublin Castle. A guy wrote his Latin life called Ward, who was a Jesuit from Donegal originally, but living in Galway. And anyway, I think that Latin life is in Brussels. I wasn't able to read the actual Latin life, but I've got a summary of it. And in it, he was released from prison in Dublin Castle. He goes to Kilkee Castle in south of Kildare. And that's described as the headquarters of the Catholic faith in Ireland. That's actually what it's described. And I think that's in the original Latin that Ward said.
Is that the Kilkee Castle down in Athy?
Yeah. It's now a hotel.
Yeah, I live beside there. It's a small world. Yeah.
It's a really big, you know, very impressive castle. Anyway, the person who owned Kilkee Castle is Elizabeth Nugent. She had married into the Earl of Kildare, so she was then a widow, the Countess of Kildare. Her steward was Richard Nugent of the Delaney family, I believe. And then Richard Nugent's 2 brothers were there, the two Jesuits, Nicholas and Robert.
Okay.
And Robert particularly, because Robert was the head of the Jesuits in Ireland. So that's what they meant by Kilkee Castle. It was the Countess and Robert. In other words, a totally Nugent affair. You know? So the headquarters of the Catholic Church, and right at the time of the Counter-Reformation, you know, is the Nugents. So and very, very few people know that reference. So it's you know, it actually is true that they really did sacrifice everything for the Catholic faith. You know,
and Robert Nugent, especially, I mean, when you look at his life, I'm surprised the Jesuits don't publicize it much more. But he wasn't timid when he came to, like, he was fully expecting to be martyred for the faith. You know, he just didn't dance around the edges. This man put his life on the line. You know, I always find it very difficult to imagine his death, you know, the way he died. But you know, I never knew about that, about Kilkee Castle and the connection there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was a big figure, but he wasn't the only figure. You know, I was in the Jesuit archives in Dublin, and in the Jesuit archives in Dublin there a few months ago, they have the letters that Robert Nugent sent to Rome to the superiors, the general of the Jesuits, who I think was in Rome at the time, in Spain. I think it's Rome, and not copies. The original actual letter that he wrote. And you might ask, how does it end up in Ireland if he sent it from Ireland to Rome? well, of course, they closed down the Jesuits, whatever it is, 1770s. You remember this stuff. And at that time, the manuscripts seem to have, gone AWOL. Some of them then went to Stonyhurst in England. From Stonyhurst, about 1800, they went to Carlow Seminary. And from Carlow, they went to the Jesuit archives. So you can actually read the actual handwriting of Robert in many, many letters. He wrote many, many letters. They're in Latin, but he wrote some in English, and he had a letter sent to him in Irish. But it's very interesting. When I went there, I knew about one book. One book has been published not long ago on the letters that the Jesuits had sent to Ireland around that time, including many by Robert Nugent. But another book has come out. It's by Vera Moynes, I think, which is a catalogue of the letters of the Jesuits of the I think 17th century in general. And meaning it's just kind of a name of, so and so sent a letter to such such, and the date, and maybe 2 lines about the letter. It's called a catalogue. And it's about 500 pages long. And they showed me this book when I went to the Jesuit archives. The next thing you know, I'm still at it about an hour or two later, just going through this catalogue. There must be 100 pages or 200 pages of 500 that involve the Nugents. And a lot of people, don't realize that because the Countess Kildare is there in a big way, and other people very closely allied to the Nugents. So yeah, it's the Jesuits are a big Nugent affair at that time.
Can we get this published, Brian? Can we get all of that published? I think Irish would like to hear this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I'm doing my best. I'm trying to do that account of the founding of the Capuchin monastery anyway. But to do the Nugents in general, it's unbelievably difficult. I mean, it really is. To do it properly, it's unbelievably difficult. Like if you have the time, I can describe to you because I know in some of your podcasts you were describing the field marshal in Austria.
Yeah,
and
Lavalin.
So I think it was after watching one of your podcasts, I was just intrigued to figure out. I knew that most people had it wrong, and I thought I could get it right, but it took me forever just to get it right, exactly his ancestry, which is unbelievable. So I'll tell it to you if you like. It'll take just a few minutes because it's very complicated. So, okay, so right, you have the Nugents of Dysart. That's the same Nugents as Friar Lavalin came from in the 1610s or whatever. So they are approximately at that time got some land towards the west of Westmeath called Farthingstown. So it's attached to Dysart. And then you have a separate family in Farthingstown who are just a branch of Dysart. That's near Rathconrath. It's right beside Rathconrath. There's a whole load of different townlands you see with the same name in Westmeath. That's why you have to be clear about these things. Anyway, you have this family growing up. So you have a Captain Lawrence Nugent in Farthingstown, listed among the Jacobite officers of 1690, Battle of the Boyne, that kind of period. He was a captain in the Jacobite army in Ireland. He had 2 sons. One was called John, and one was called Patrick. Patrick married into the Pallas family, Pallas. I mentioned them earlier, and he married Clare Pallas. His son became a colonel in the Illyrian army. They actually call it that, meaning in the Balkans. Croatia, that kind of period. He joined up with Loudon, Loudon. He's a general who was coming out from Germany to assist in attacking the Turks in Belgrade, believe it or not.
Wow.
I think it was a siege about 1780-ish, and he died there. So that was that Colonel Nugent, who was a son of Patrick and his wife, Clare Pallas. So that happened to that family. Then you have the John, went to live from Farthingstown to Ballinaccarrow, which is not all that far away. Ballinaccarrow is exactly on the borders between Longford and Westmeath, where the Inny River is very big and there's islands on it, a big bridge there. So that's Ballinaccarrow. He went to live with other Nugents, and this is what makes doing the Nugents a nightmare, because they have a kind of a clan attitude. I mean, that's what I'm doing here. If you think about it, because I'm not immediately related to you, but we're Nugents, And I was actually in Multifarnham the other day, and the guy asked me that. He said, "Do the Nugents, around the place who cooperated? Do they know each other?" Yeah, we do, because there's only a few of us left in this locality. Anyway, that was very much the attitude they had at the time. They have a clan attitude. So it didn't matter that you were directly related. You were a Nugent, and that's a ticket to ride. So he goes to live in Ballinaccarrow for no better reason than there was Nugents already living there, and they didn't have children. So the Nugents that were living there were from a place called Bracklin. Bracklin
Yes.
is a hill in between Delvin and Mullingar, kind of. And it's a very, very old family, the family of Bracklin. At this particular time, at 7010, you had three brothers. You have Michael, who had to live then at Ballinacare. He left the whole area of Bracklin to Ballinacare is a big distance away, it's way off the other side of Westmeath. You have Nicholas, who I believe was shot near Bracklin. That's the great traditions of the Bracklin family, as transmitted by the Featherstones, who later had the house. They said that the Nugents, one of them was shot, that's why they left. I think that'd be Nicholas. And then the other brother was Oliver, who married into the Dowdall family and went to live in Clonagura. Now, that Michael then went to live in Ballinacare. He had no children, so John kind of takes over. Michael's wife was also Nugent from a different family. Anyway, John takes over. John marries well. He marries the daughter, the heiress of a merchant family called Coyne, Coine. Now, this merchant family, curiously enough, had purchased a lot of land in Westmeath about 1700 from the Nugents, the confiscated land, because of course the Nugents lost all the land with all the different confiscations. And the Coynes had bought that land. And then anyway, he marries the heiress of this Coyne and gets the land back in a kind of way. So with this Coyne marriage, who's Mary Coyne, he gets the Cavan side of Finney. He gets a place called Lacken, which is right beside Multifarnham. And he gets lots of properties in Dublin. So then you hear about this guy in all the different records. This John Nugent of Ballinacare. He's sometimes in Ballinacare, sometimes at Farthingstone, where he came from, and North Conrad was near there. He's sometimes of Lacken near Multifarnham. He's sometimes of Finney, sometimes of Dublin. Anyway, he commutes around all these places. Then he had a number of daughters, but in particular, he had a son, Lawrence Coyne Nugent. Lawrence after his grandfather, Coyne after his mother, the heiress. And he is commuting all these different places, Finney, Dublin, Lacken, not Ballinacare, interestingly enough. And he becomes a barrister. He goes to King's Inns, he practices in Kilkenny. He gets a house in Kilkenny called Mount Nugent, so he's up there as well. And you see him commuting all over the place. And he's in the records quite a lot. Lawrence Coyne Nugent. He had a reputation for eccentricity, at least some of which was true. For example, he sued his housekeeper for theft, lost the case and married the housekeeper, and had two children with her. But also, he went to the Grand Tour. He was in Northern Italy in about 1780. And when you read down it, he said that the Duke of Milan and all these people, I can't remember the exact titles, invited him to spend a night and whatever. And he took them up on the offer because he obviously considered himself aristocracy, but in Egypt. But I don't think they considered him aristocracy. He didn't have a title or anything. So they kind of kicked him out. He applied to the British minister in Florence. And then he had a great row, a legal row with the British minister. Anyway, his letters are there. It's not a very attractive story, but they said he was mad. I don't really think so, but he was a bit eccentric. When he died, they disputed his will to his two sons because they claimed he was mad or whatever. But actually, the two sons did get some of them. Anyway, that's Lawrence Coyne Nugent. Now, when John Nugent of Ballinacare, that's the father of Lawrence Coyne Nugent, died, his will is totally in existence. It's in the National Library, and the full will, you can read the whole thing, mentions this Lawrence, etc., mentions his wife, Mary Coyne, who survived him. And that's great, except you read down through the records, you're going to find John Nugent of Ballinacare and his wife, Jane McDonough, on occasion. Sometimes he's a wife, Mary Coyne, sometimes the wife is Jane McDonough. He married again. And the circumstances are very confusing, but it's actually in the newspapers. I think about 1760, he marries this Jane McDonough, daughter of Brian McDonough of Dublin. And anyway, of that family, he has the two sons. Michael, the younger son, I think goes to France and joins the Irish Brigades in France, and then later goes to Germany. He marries into a countess family, so his son is a count. And his son dies in Brescia, Brescia, in northern Italy. I think it's Brescia, in 1848, in the Great Flood. And when he dies, he gives half his estate to the town of Brescia, because earlier an Austrian general, his colleague, had sacked Brescia and just ripped up the place. And he was so annoyed about this that when he died, he gave half his estate to the town to try and recompense them. Anyway, that's what happened to the younger brother and his son. And then the elder brother is Lavalin. That's Lavalin. He goes to England when his father dies. He goes from there to Austria. He joins up with the counts in Austria. Again, that's the clan working. He wasn't related to these fellows in Austria. but the guys in Austria were from a place called Colambre, Castle Nugent, and they sponsor him to go into the academy, military academy, and from there he ends up a field marshal, a very
Yeah.
important field marshal.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
mean,
their 2050.
he's a big figure, and there's tons written about Laval Nugent in Italian. I can get books in Italian, but I in English in Ireland you struggle to get the complete life of Laval Nugent. But initially he, I mean, he defeats Murash underneath Monte Cassino, on the plain below Monte Cassino, that famous Benedictine monastery.
Yeah,
That's where he defeats the Horseman of Europe.
yeah,
It's an amazing
yeah,
life, and he's very Catholic. He remained,
yeah.
like the faith meant a lot to him. The chapels and so forth that he built. So,
Mm.
oh, it's interesting that the life. But
Yeah, yeah. But,
thanks for
but
filling it. I never was able to connect all of the different dots, because
yeah.
my aunt did all of the history, and we can go back to the 1700s, and trying to connect all the dots together was an interesting task, but it's
but,
definitely a
but
fact.
yeah. But it's not an accident that you can't connect the dots. This is the strange thing about his family history. You see, there's more to that than meets the eye. You see, well, first of all, the first confusion is he joins with Casanova and Colamba, right? These were counts in Vienna. But you might like to know that one of them, the head of that, was a very interesting figure. His name was James, and he along with his three brothers, joined in with the imperial army from, as I said, Colamba Castle. And anyway, he becomes a general in the Austrian army, and he's captured by none at one of the sieges in Germany by none other than Frederick the Great of Prussia. It was his armies, so he becomes a prisoner of war as an Austrian general under Frederick the Great of Prussia. And it seems that around that time he becomes a good friend of Frederick the Great of Prussia. He's then released. He goes back to Vienna, and next thing you know, the Austrian government decide to make him the Austrian ambassador to Berlin. So he's actually a very key figure. He was a very important ambassador in Berlin. They actually say that some of the wars of Europe were averted because of his tremendous diplomacy and all the rest of it. They actually do say that. So anyway, what some of the Austrian sources assume is that when he lived in his household in Vienna, that he was related to our field marshal that we're talking about. When he wasn't, but it's written in the records that he was, and that's where one of the confusion comes.
Oh,
Another
okay.
confusion, yeah, but another part of the confusion is that around about 1850, what happens is that after the famine, many of the Irish landlords were penniless. They were heavily in debt. The government actually came along and compelled them to sell if they were heavily in debt. They set up two courts, called a landed estates court and an encumbered estates court. And one of the families that was going to have to sell their land under that was a family of Ballinacor in the
Mhm.
west part of County Westmeath. So they had to sell. Next thing you know, the field marshal hears about it in Vienna, and he comes back through England to Ireland to buy the estate. Because again, it's a Nugent estate. This is one of the great Nugent estates, obviously, and he's not going to let it go out of the hands of the Nugents. So he's going to buy it. So he turns up in Ballinacor and he buys the estate. But the fascinating thing about it is that that family of Ballinacor, a few generations back, the mother was Dalton. Now, this Dalton was a sister of a general in the Austrian army, and that general had a patent of 1777 by Maria Therese of Austria, making him a count of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, that's not surprising, but the patent says that all his brothers can become counts at the same time, and his sister and these are all hereditary counts. So his sister has the right to have her family called counts. So that sister marries to the Nugents of Ballinacor. So next thing you know, the Nugents of Ballinacor are counts of the Holy Roman Empire. So now you have this sale of land in Ballinacor in County Westmeath. The Count Nugent actually is selling the land in 1850, and another Count Nugent is buying it in 1850. So the poor old historian comes along in 1890, writes the Dictionary National Biography, and he says they're the same family. Of course, they're the same family. They're Nugent and they're Counts. It must be, and he got it wrong. They're not related at all. This is the
Oh,
clan thing kicking in. So
yeah.
that's the second great confusion of the Nugents. But the third great confusion, and this is what I'm telling you, it's not an accident. What happens is when he's coming back to Ireland to purchase this land, he goes through England and he talks to the Burkes, Bernard Burke, who is the Ulster King of Ireland, the head of heraldry in Ireland. He also talks to Richard Nugent, who's a Nugent historian, and from this we get the story that he told them that his ancestry was the Bracklin. He said that John Nugent was of Bracklin, and also that his ancestry was from John Nugent of Drumane, who would be an elder. You'd be close to the main line of the Nugents. In other words, his idea was if the Marquis of Westmeath, as he then was going to die, his family would become the Earls because they'd be linked up very close, high up in the genealogical chain, if you like. And that was a total fraud. And that came from the Field Marshal himself. He was him that fraudulently said they came from Bracken and from Drumane. And but what gets better, not only did he draw up a false, completely fraudulent pedigree, that's everywhere. You see that all the place. Existing pedigrees within the Ulster King of Arms office were doctored, they were forged to accommodate his completely false pedigree. If you look at it, I can see it. You can see how they rub out a line and they add in another line and they put in this. So now you see the difficulties of doing anything right. You have, fellas come along with fraud and everything. It's very
well, he certainly he certainly was able to maneuver himself. I mean, didn't he marry from the Sforza family in Caserta? He married. On the way he married into another noble family, and that was an interesting development, and then he made himself the last Frankopan in Croatia, but like you can't fault the man for maneuvering himself where he went.
Well, he had an incredible career. I mean, he would be quite a figure in the resulting records, even in England, from about 1812 to about 1865. And he was a general. I think I might say he was a general, an active general for that period. And I'm sure people watching this are saying, you got your figures mixed up. How do you be an active general for over 54 years? And yet he was. He actually was. He was a leading general. During the First Napoleonic Wars in Italy, 1812, that kind of period, he's still a general at the battle, I think it's Marengo, in about 1865. Yeah. And so that battle is between the French and the Italians against the Austrians. Now, he was only an advisor of the battle, but after the Austrians lost and they were retreating. And at one point, he puts himself on a hill close to the front line. And he stops anybody leaving. There's the account of it. He was just there himself, and fellows were trying to leave. He said, no, you stay here. And the upshot of that was that the French general, there's a specific story, the French officer, looking through his binoculars, he's looking at this hill. He says, no, the Austrians are out in force. We can't touch that hill. We give up on attacking that. Why? Because I've seen definitively the uniform of an Austrian field marshal right there. And of course, if an Austrian field marshal is there, obviously there's an army there. And it was just him. So he actually does turn up in the history in 1865. He must have been in his 80s. I don't know what
he was. He was. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot written about Lavalin Nugent in Italian. I mean, because I can find books in Italian, and then you have his son, who was what was his son? You have that famous picture of his son riding into Zagreb, which they have in the Croatian museums. I mean, he's just one of them, and then you have that his project was to found a Franciscan village in Croatia. This was one of his dreams, to found this Franciscan village, which didn't turn out. However, it's strange that even though he didn't get to found a Franciscan village, the Franciscans they still are pivotal in the church in Croatia and Medjugorje and all these places. So who knows? Yeah.
But so do you get a lot of stick for supporting Medjugorje in traditionalist movement? Or?
I mean, I'm a bit like you. I like to probe. I like to dig a little bit, you know, and because like okay, so the faith is real. It is for you and it is for me. And and so I'm kind of digging there. Okay, well, what's going on in Medjugorje? And I know Michael Jones is very.
Yeah.
I've listened to Michael Jones, and we hear him, but when you think about it logically, I mean, the Franciscans and people don't realize this, how embedded they are in Croatian, in the Croatian, in Croatia, how embedded they are in the church, and how fractious the relationship was between bishops and Franciscans, not just after Medjugorje, but before Medjugorje. And all of a sudden, you have this apparition in Medjugorje, which I mean, the relationship with the Franciscans that isn't great there, isn't helping this apparition at all, because the Franciscans overwhelmingly supported it, and the bishop wasn't, you know, because was trying to wrestle power from the Franciscans. But Brian, my honest view on Medjugorje, and I think this from anybody that's looking at it, is the same as Our Lady of Kibeho in Rwanda. It's it's kind of the warning before a catastrophe. And like when you go to Bosnia, because this third time I went to Bosnia, I didn't stay in Medjugorje a lot of the time. I want to get out of Medjugorje, and I want to see the big picture here of Medjugorje. I don't want to be, because a lot of Irish, we go to Medjugorje and we stay there and we do that. I rented a car, I drove around, and what you see, Brian, is the reality. 100,000 people died right there in that country 10 years after that
Yeah.
apparition. And you have Our Lady coming, says, peace, 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 mir, mir, mir. And do you know some of the messages, Father Leon Pereira, he's been digging into them, you know, the Dominican type of scrutiny that he's given to this apparition. And well, Our Lady wouldn't come to create animosity and hatred and war. You know, she wouldn't come to foment that. She would come, step back, stop the hatred. You know,
Yeah.
so I mean, uh, I'm never going to be 100%, you know, because I've been burned so much with different stuff in the church. But I can't help but thinking that Medjugorje is that Kibeho warning scenario for Bosnia and for the world. You know, it's like Our Lady specifically coming at a time when just before a tsunami of death is arriving to that region. That's
Yeah.
my view on it. But what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, no, I think you could right. And then it begs the question that if Our Lady came to Ireland in 1985, did we get a warning? Are we going to get, hit over the head with a hammer sometime soon? But by the way, it's interesting because you know there's so many apparitions. One of them occurred in a grotto at Mount Mallory Abbey, just about a mile down the road from probably the most famous monastery in Ireland. And they didn't support it at all, not even to a tiny extent. So you've almost got two different communities in about a mile apart. The Mallory Grotto community, which supports and still do 30, 40 years later, and the Mount Mallory Abbey, and they hardly ever moved it. It's just that. So
Yeah,
you know, the apparition was not supported by.
yeah.
Yeah, but hmm, yeah, yeah, I described it there. Yeah, but it is very widely supported. Mount Mary Grotto, it really
Yeah.
is. It's something. But anyway, so this is the great question. Okay, this is true news. You know, our ancestors fought the good fight, the Counter Reformation. They fought back. So what do we do now? How do we get the Catholic faith to come back into our?
I think
You know,
what you
what's the
said
story?
earlier on is before we need a faith revival. There needs to be a
Yeah,
revival of the faith in Ireland. And it
but
can't
how
be,
how how do we do that?
I think we're looking at our ancestors will do that. I think looking at our ancestors that gave up houses, castles, churches, at the end of the day, they carried the faith. They gave up
Yeah,
the buildings, but they carried the faith. Today we've tons of buildings, but we don't have the faith. And
yeah,
I think history rhymes in our family, because you know it's strange generation, it's the same families. We seem to be coming back to the same families. Like you're talking about Lavalin Nugent and going to Austria. The first night I stayed in Vienna, I stayed in Archduke Michael's apartment in Vienna. That's Edward Habsburg's father. You know, he's the ambassador to the Holy See for Austria. The first time I went to Budapest was with Archduke Michael Habsburg as well, and it's like how do families keep how do these generation we keep returning to the same places, you know, it's not like I planned this. It just that's the way things happen. And I think history is teaching us a lesson to look at the past and to provide leadership for the future. You know, we have to provide leadership for once you take out the religious element, once you take out God from our society, and it's exactly what you said earlier on in this interview, we have to find morals, we have to find a structure somewhere else. So you're saying with the recycling or with this movement or that movement, but God gives the fullness of God, I mean the union with God. I mean, I always look to the Carmelites to the Carmelite tradition in the sense that because you know the scapular comes up so much in apparitions. You know,
Yeah.
what's Our Lady saying towards the Carmelites? And I think it's looking at the past and giving leadership now for the future. We cannot renew the faith in Ireland without this encounter with Christ. I mean, that's that's the only place I'll take. I don't know, Mike, Brian. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Okay, but there must be practical things we can pull out of that history and apply it now. You know, I wonder, one of the things could be that to a certain extent the Counter Reformation is a tapping into the tradition. It's going back to the roots to a purer form, or what you know, and then explaining that. So what I mean by that is you take the Franciscans. They start off as conventuals, and then they get kind of lazy, whatever. So they have to go back to the roots, and you get the observance. And then around this time of the kind of they go back to the roots again. You get the Capuchins. So in other words, you went back to a purer form of the thing. You know, the
Yeah,
Capuchins like wouldn't even go on a horseback; they had to walk because that's the same as Saint Francis and all the rest. And that was the source of their revival. That you know, so another way of looking at this, you see, if for me anyway, you know, the point about the Catholic Church is it's the truth. It simply is the
it's
way the universe is set up. You have God, you have purgatory. It's all just true. That's just simply it. You know, and the truth, you just have to set it free. You know, you have to, you know, there's a logic to the truth. You just have to tap into it. And that's one thing that I would say about the modern church post Vatican II. It actually doesn't have a logic to it. You know, I like to explain that because people think I'm exaggerating, right? You had this episode 2 years ago. I call it an episode, the Father Sheehy episode in the Irish Catholic Church. Father Sheehy gets up out of his hind legs or whatever in Mass in Kerry, and he says there's such a thing as hell. That's all he said. It wasn't a traditional sermon. He didn't say, oh, everybody should go to Mass. He just said there was such a thing as hell. That caused massive outrage all across Ireland. And it generated a whole lot of letters where people said that they'd been going to Mass for 70 years and they never heard anybody say anything about hell. You know, so, and indeed, I was actually talking to, just on that point, to a bishop. I did an interview with a bishop a few years ago, or a few months ago. And I asked him, did he ever do a sermon on homosexuality, to say that homosexuality was a sin? And he's now in his 80s, early 80s, I think. And no is the answer. Never. Absolutely never. No, I mean, you can't just pick out any rare sin and ask a guy to do a sermon on it. But it's not a rare sin. We have pride parades dominating the news bulletins all across Ireland for months on end. And he never got around to ever saying to people that it's a sin. So
yeah,
it's not an exaggeration to say that the modern Catholic Church does not teach any stuff about hell or purgatory, whatever, to an enormous extent. Now, if you don't teach that, then there actually is no logic to an awful lot of what happens with the Catholic. The whole idea is you got the Ten Commandments, God's law on earth. You abide by that, you get to heaven. You don't abide by that, you go to hell. And that's why you're abiding by it. If you've
yeah,
eliminated hell and everybody goes to heaven when they die, you've actually eliminated the logical structure of the Catholic faith. And that means that you're not going to attract intelligent, particularly men. Logical people are not going to be attracted to the kind of mishmash kind of attitude that you get from post-Vatican II in some quarters. So that's the first thing. There is a logic. You have to get back to the logic. You have to explain it like a maths problem, because it can be explained, but only the traditional churches. The rest of it is, oh, God loves you, and then you hit some snag in your life and you get bad health, or some relative gets bad health. Oh, God doesn't love you, you're not solved that. You have to be a bit more detail, a bit more logic. So that's one thing I think we could, because that's the other thing. You talked about the Counter Reformation. It was founded then on the edicts of Trent, the Council of Trent. So that's again bringing you back. I mean, before that, they thought maybe people were going to modernize it and whatever. No, they didn't. They went back to the beginning of it and established, the logical line. So, and that made an impact. Once you're able to establish this logic, it will make an impact flow through the church. So that's one thing I would take from it. It is a return. I disagree with you a little bit, because you're always saying, "Oh, there won't be a return to Latin Mass and whatever," or I think you were saying something like that.
It's not that Brian. It's not that I mean, as I said, if you were to ask me, Robert Nugent, and I could command the forces of B, what would be the Mass I would return to? It would be without a doubt the traditional Latin Mass. Because it's this, it's not wishy-washy. No. It takes guts. It takes a man to celebrate, a man of faith to celebrate that. But practically speaking, in practice now in 2024, where the church is it possible that it returned to the universal Roman rite? I mean, looking at the whole life of the church, I find it difficult, But I think Pope Benedict had it right. What previous generations held sacred is sacred to us and great to us too. It's great to me. It was great to my grandfather. Why get rid of it? Why do we have to destroy the holy sacrifice, the Mass? Like, the whole reason we're doing this interview today, this talk, is because you in your video, Shakespeare was Irish. You mentioned briefly that Eucharistic miracle in St. Mary's in Delvin, and I'm just there thinking, these Nugents witnessing a Eucharistic miracle while the priest gives out communion before that church is turned Anglican. Why did these men put their lives on the line for the faith? These men that had to give up money, had to give up their families, had to give up their castles, had to give up their home, had to give up their country. They obviously believed the faith was worth dying for. And these weren't, they gave up everything. And so if you think about it, Brian, they're witnessing that Mass in Delvin. We'll have to dig out more information, but they're witnessing the holy sacrifice of the Mass. We have lost the sense of the absolute profoundly sacred of the Mass. We've absolutely, I used to bring my kids at Christmas to Athlone, to the SSBX in Athlone for Christmas Mass. And I remember my eldest daughter saying to me, Ellen, she's 23, said, "Daddy, that was very beautiful Mass. And I really enjoyed it. And it was why don't the whole church, this is what kids are seeing, you're treating this as serious. This is a serious faith. It's not like what, like as for heaven." It's frustrating because I don't like to say, I don't like to create division in the Irish Church and say, this is the way, and we're rigid and we're completely. I think we're pragmatic in the sense that, like Father Shee is saying, our Lord spoke about hell. You read the Gospels, he does talk about you can be eternally lost the odd time. Why is he giving us the warning? And the church today, no, like.
And Marian apparitions. You always have some event in the Marian apparitions that you exposes hell or whatever. So it is important. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, just look at the practical thing. So I would say, first of all, you have to have a logic to it, and the only logic is in the traditional one. You have to get rid of just fairy stuff afterwards. So the second thing that you take away from that period what was a well-known phenomenon was that the Anglicans had the churches, and therefore they had the tithes, and therefore they were kind of wealthy, not massively wealthy, but comfortable. And the guys coming in who were Catholics, they were just begging for whatever they had, which is almost nothing. I think even St. Oliver Plunkett, who's the primate of all Ireland, I think he was living in a hut and he just, they're drinking goat's milk or whatever even that time. So that's an interesting insight. The modern Irish church, it is actually slightly wealthier than the general public a lot of the time. And it gives off that air just a little bit. It's just too posh, too close to the establishment in Ireland. They self-consciously seem to align themselves to this stuff. We saw that the whole COVID thing, which was broadcast on RTE and obviously all these stuff. The church went in, hammer and tongs and all that to an incredible extent. It's like they're just too tied in with it. And it's money and it's a sort of an elite or something. They have to disentangle themselves. The elite in Ireland, hate the Catholics. Everything you listen to Joe Duffy, it should be obvious to people. So you're getting close to a guy who's trying to stab you in the back. So they need to disengage. They need to not be afraid to give out about the state. And assert themselves. So you have Catholic schools. They're supposedly Catholic schools, but they're teaching unbelievable stuff. You see videos out now. I mean, it's like pornography they're teaching in Catholic schools. And so it's still called them Catholic schools. It has to be one or the other. You have to either dislocate from the whole thing or assert your right to have a Catholic school, a real Catholic school. So I think that's another one. The Catholics have to cut loose from the state and from these fellows that were trying to kill them and stop this elite kind of and somewhat financial kind of air that they have. That's the other thing I would say. Because of course that's what happened in the Counter-Reformation Ireland. The state is run by Protestants. This is all a kind of rebel underground. And maybe that does tap into an atmosphere that works in Ireland. And the other thing I would say too is that, it is a truth. The Catholic Church is a truth. That's the way the universe is set up. That's the way you personally and I personally are set up. We have a soul. The soul, it wants to be with God, whatever. And when you get the sacraments from the authentic Catholic Church, it is you and God, and there's an alignment. And so when you're going to church, you're going to a warm fire, if you like, for the human soul. And the human soul is attracted to it. But there has to be certain elements before that works. For example, you want to receive Holy Communion. That's great, but you have to be in a state of, not sin. You have to have gone to confession. Usually they say about 2 weeks or something before you receive Holy Communion. The vast majority of Irish people don't. Then they go to receive Holy Communion, and that's actually a mortal sin. So it's not a question of your soul, and the soul of the Eucharist and all the rest, and marrying of, it's not like that at all. You're committing a mortal sin when you receive Holy Communion under those circumstances. So that just gives one example where if you make it right, if you have the authentic Catholic Church and the authentic guide coming to it through confession and the whole, you'll get a meeting of the soul and the sacraments that will bring people to the church. That's all you actually need. You just need authentic Catholicism.
But that's what you're describing there is the key to sanctifying grace. The key to sanctifying, recognize sin, confess sin, get absolution from sin, and receive the source of our divine life, which is Christ. I mean, this is what St. Teresa of Avila is talking about. In order to enter into the mansions, we have to work on this. You're just describing the bread and butter, like basic bread and butter of Catholicism, like that we would have been taught what sin is, what sin isn't, and you avoid it and you confess it if you commit it, but you never receive communion unless you're in a state of grace. I mean, we're so lost, Brian. The Irish church is so lost. And then they're wondering why people don't go to mass, because we've cut off soul's access to sanctifying grace. All of that work that Christ is trying to do in the soul, the Irish church has gone, you have pockets of any of the, Opus Dei or the SSPX, the traditional movement. Anybody going to traditional Latin Mass will know about this. You have pockets of people that teach the faith, but in your normal parish, the church is wondering why our parish is dying. Well, you've just destroyed soul's access to sanctifying grace. That's what we've done. We've destroyed Yeah. And you're not inventing this. We're not inventing this. Isn't an opinion that we're saying. This is what we've done. This is a statement of reality in the Irish Church.
Yeah,
The Archbishop of Armagh saying we need to pass on the faith. But
yeah,
if we don't teach people how to engage with the divine, this process of engaging with Christ, because he asks us
yeah,
to convert. Um,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where we're going to. How do we get people to think about this even?
Yeah, well, you see, one way of looking at it is that the traditional movement should be the arrowhead
Mhm.
that's helping to convert Ireland. And unfortunately, it really isn't. Maybe it was a little bit during lockdown because the traditional church was the only one kept going, and it did keep going. For those who don't know, it went underground, but it did actually keep going. But after that, it isn't actually the case that the traditional movement in Ireland is growing very much, and I don't know why. I think it should, but maybe there's a few sort of structural reasons that are there. So for example, the SSPX now generally take the view that they want to keep their head down. And if they keep their head down, nobody notices them and they'll survive. That actually is kind of an official view come from the top of the SSPX. Now, if they do that, they won't get publicity. Even you give them some publicity, and I don't think they like that. And so they don't get publicity, nobody gets to hear about them, and then people don't go to the masses. So that's sort of that.
Yeah,
And the SSPX resistance has that attitude even more so because I don't think they even have a website saying where their masses are held, and it can be
no,
difficult to contact them. Some, you have even the indult orders. I was trying to organise something to do a tune there a few weeks ago, and I just went to the website of the Institute of Christ the King, and the only way to contact them, you hit contact, and it goes onto a German website, and even the contact is all in German, and that's the only way you could contact them. So I went onto Facebook and I got an email address. And I sent an email. I didn't get a reply. So how do even the smallest parish in the country, you have a secretary, and they take down. And that's how you expand. It means a little bit anyway. You
yeah,
have to be more open to the world a little bit, so that people can join in with you. And so that's
yeah,
not happening within the Latin Mass community. Which is great. It's
yeah.
a great community, but it's
Yeah.
not growing like it should. I think.
No, no. But at the end of the day, I mean, when you look at the landscape of Irish Catholicism, and it's going to take generations. It'll be our grandchildren, if anything. We plant the tree. We start planting trees now, and they're going to be hanging the swings on those trees in 100 years. They'll look back at our conversation now. I mean, I just see the misery of a society that has no God. You've no God, so you have to fill your life with something else, pleasure and sex, and you have these 10,000 abortions a year, and you have euthanasia that they're going to bring in, and thousands and thousands of people turning up for a fake Halloween parade. This is how mindless the Irish people are. They will turn up for a fake Halloween parade on Halloween, and yet they will not go to meet their creator at the holy sacrifice of the mass in the same numbers. If we advertised a Catholic event in Dublin, it wouldn't even get
Yeah,
10% of the turnout that the fake Halloween. This is it, Brian. People are looking
yeah,
for something.
yeah,
They want something.
yeah.
But
But I'm more hopeful than you are. I'm telling you, we can turn this around.
oh, we can.
This is
No,
all, yeah.
it's no, it's
But earlier than 100 years from now,
yeah,
I was
no.
talking to a friar, I was talking to a friar in Multi-Farnham there not long ago. Like, we don't have 100 years. If it doesn't turn around soon, they'd have to close down Multi-Farnham and all of the other, I think
I
it's only the
know.
Dominicans.
Yeah.
And maybe
Would
one of
that
the dioceses.
yeah.
So we have to turn around a bit sooner, but we will. We will. It can be done. It's like,
It
you
can
know,
it can absolutely be done, and it's a matter of capturing the imagination of the church, and it's doing what's possible. We do the possible, then God comes along and does the impossible through us. But like I actually do feel that we are called to. I mean, the church wants lay people in positions of leadership. Hello, you know, here we are. You know,
yeah,
two
yeah.
Nugents in Ireland.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
you did good work with do you know that to light the fire on the advertise. It's unbelievable the crowd that came to that.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, that was on the Hill of Slane. I'm sure a lot of people introduced to the movement, but know the Hill of Slane, and you have whenever you organise something, there's a few people just within that kind of stone wall or whatever. And with that event, there was people from the very top where you have that kind of stone walls, whatever, all the way down to the gate at the bottom was actually packed solid with people. It was more like a papal visit to them. And it was just organized on social media. And it wasn't,
Yeah.
I don't think in any newspaper, any television or radio.
No.
So it is happening a little bit of revival, is visible and is possible,
And
you know.
yeah, I can't take credit for that. That was organized by Dana and the Oasis of Peace. And I mean, when I saw it come out, I promoted it out. But what's you can inspire the imagination of people to engage and to go deeper, to actually go deeper into the
Yeah,
faith. Because once you go into this Christ's kingdom, once we enter into this relationship with Christ, he'll drag you deeper into this world he's trying to show us. I as I said, we do the possible, we give the leadership and we give inspiration and we'll see where we can go with this. But I honestly do think that some people hate the word traditional movement or traditional Latin Mass, but it is, Brian, it is a deeply, deeply mystic experience.
mm,
William Nugent actually said this, and I was just reading through it. Our experience is a mystic. I was just a phrase that I picked up in this book today, but it kind of captured the imagination. You know, that the Mass
our,
is a
our,
deep.
our heritage,
Our
our
heritage is
heritage is mystic speech. Yeah,
exactly our
our heritage
heritage,
is,
mystic
is,
speech,
yeah,
and what
it's
and
from the
what
poem.
yeah, and what
Yeah,
so our heritage is mystic speech. And what
yeah,
heritage were the Nugents most proud of? Their faith.
yeah,
So they're talking about their heritage. I mean, the faith. Our
yeah,
heritage is a mystic. Um,
yeah,
the saints. If you think about it, saints levitated at this mystical mass. Today
yeah,
the Mass is a performance. So in the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit, and welcome to the Sunday Mass, and where it's a month's mind for this, and it's a performance. The priest is looking at the audience is looking at the performer. There's about as much mysticism in there as a bingo hall. I'm sorry to say that. It is the truth. Could you ever see a priest rising up like the Saint of Cupertino? It lacks that encounter of mysticism. When you go to traditional Latin Mass, the priest is stepping into heaven. He's leading you into
yeah,
contemplate heaven. It is.
yeah.
I mean,
You see,
there's no.
yeah, I see specifically what happens is you're trying to say that this liturgy is 2,000 years old, it's given to you by art, which is a very mystical thing to say. But if you go to a modern day mass, it looks an awful lot like something that was arranged by Mrs. Murphy down the road who thought these prayers would be nice in this particular order. If you had a particular ceremony, they often say that only for Mrs. Murphy. So they rearrange and they add in things. And then you're trying to persuade people that this is the unmovable faith of two that doesn't match. Whereas you go to the traditional Latin Mass, they read from a missal, it's exactly the same words as has been said 2,000 years, for approximately. Then you believe that it's something mystical, that's what it is. It's unchanging, you know,
It
and
is.
it's unarranged. Yeah,
It is. It is. I mean, and I love liturgies. I love going and experiencing the divine liturgy, and I've stayed in Mount Athos and stayed with the Orthodox monks, and they take their liturgy, Brian, extremely serious. I mean, there is just no way you're going to take out a phone during the divine liturgy. Not a chance. There's no way it'll ever go off in the chapel, or they would boot you out and you'd never come back. It like we're there at mass and then the phone goes off and the old biddy is there for 20 seconds trying to turn off a phone in the chapel. I said, guys, guys, this is this. As I said, I go back to that. experience of the Nugents and that Eucharistic miracle in St. Mary's in Delvin, they must have experienced something that changed their lives to have given up everything. What is that experience that they had? What is the experience? This is the we have to give weight back to the Mass. It has to feel heavy. It has to feel valuable. It has to feel, okay, this is something that I'm going to die for because this is heaven. We're losing
But
we're losing the younger
yeah,
generation.
yeah, you see, so you had this great faith among some of them, and maybe they did have apparitions, similar type of episodes, because it could be a lot more than are recorded. But the
Yeah,
other interesting thing is that what they had was the self-confidence to disagree with the established view. See, when you go around Ireland, they lack that. We're told that the Church is X, Y, and Z, and people just go along with it. It wasn't their personal experience, but they just, oh, everybody says that, and so I remember reading this guy, and he was absolutely descending on the nuns, and all Ireland was awful place ever. And then you read the account of the way he lived, and when he wanted to find out his own family history, the only person that helped him was this nun, to absolutely moved heaven and earth to assist him. In his own personal life, he'd only ever experienced, the great help of it. But the outside world just comes on top of people. And some Irish people, they lack the confidence to stand back against it. They just go along with the thing because everybody else has gone along with it. So there's an element to which people have to, stand up and be kind of think the thing through for themselves a bit more. Because I think that's
yeah.
what also happening.
But
That
isn't it amazing after Vatican II that the Irish Catholic Church completely went along with the changes? There was tiny resistance, a very, very tiny minority of resistance. And we were the best kids in town when it came to, implementing the new Mass. Um,
yeah,
and I, I like even being so obedient to the Vatican II changes, and many of them that weren't called from Vatican II because the ripping out altar rails and spending all the none of this was called. Not a single altar in Rome, not a single sanctuary in Rome was ripped out, and yet the Irish Church was
yeah,
so enlightened that they had to go along. But I mean, I don't know. I can't
yeah,
understand how we've arrived to this situation where,
yeah. Yeah. But
but
you see the
look,
same phenomenon. They lack the self-confidence to think it through themselves and have their own opinion. Because their own opinion would have been to leave the thing alone. They're obviously very beautiful, these old altars. It's just objectively, why the heck would anybody want to spend millions in some cases ripping the things out? That's kind of why I'm a traditionalist, because in our
mm,
local parish, they spend, I think, 1 million between two churches, just ripping the altar around. It's just, I thought it was mad. And I was told it's because of Vatican II, so I went off to research this, and so brought me into, was it done right? Of course, it wasn't, as you say. But that's it. They just go along. It's not, there isn't any other logic to it. It's just internationally they went along, so the Irish Church went along. You know,
yeah,
people have to just think things through for themselves and have the confidence to, stand against the tide of it.
yeah,
Even if someone's talking to people about some issues, and if there's going to be a big crowd at it, they want to be, if there's going to be 1,000 people doing something, they'll be part of that, and there won't be otherwise. They're afraid to stand as a small number of people. So because that's what I detect in the Nugents in the 17th century, late 16th century. They were the type of people to be self-confident enough to stand aside. And also the curious thing was that they were in a very rural area. You're into the west part of Westmeath, in the east part of Meath, South Cavan. So massively rural. There isn't any big town. Mullingar is well known to be the biggest, and then Dublin the other side. So they were living in isolated rural area, and therefore they thought for themselves. Whereas you're in kind of a more urban, or even sometimes the west of Ireland, it's almost like an urban community in a rural area. They're all kind of stuck together. So that people living apart or whatever, they had the self-confidence to think through whether they agreed or disagreed, and then to stand up and say they disagree. That's actually what's lacking in modern Ireland. That simple point.
yeah.
You know,
I it's a strange. It's a very ingrained in us as Nugents, like to to kind of think things out. I mean, I see it with my own family and extended family. I don't know. is that the way it was instilled in us, or what? But like, I just can't accept that we're going to allow the faith die off in Ireland. I think we're bonkers.
Yeah.
I think we're betraying our own heritage. I mean, certainly as
Yeah.
Nugents, as I said to my kids, I say it every Christmas. I said, the only Christmas present I want is you to pass on the faith to your grandkids. This is the present. I don't want watches. I don't want anything material. I want you children to give this faith. This is my treasure. And I want you to give this to my grandkids. Now, I know my kids will, because, they say when I have children, I'll bring them to Mass and I'll do this, because I've instilled it into them that this is the only thing precious for me and my library of expensive books. I said, don't throw them out. If this thing cost me, God, I don't know how much, and it's because I wanted to get, but anyway,
Well,
if we don't,
you can't blame you can't blame to tell them how much you paid to buy the Marian apparitions.
this one,
Yeah,
you gave it to. Oh
yeah,
no, do you know what?
yeah,
This is a
yeah,
very strange book to get this. This was
yeah,
because I remember I met you one day and you said, "Oh, I've published the Marian apparitions." And then this is strange how I got this book. And then I was meaning to buy it and I forgot to buy it. And I said, "Oh, I must get Brian's," because I think you gave me Tune Babies, or you gave me a few of your books, but you didn't have a copy of this one. But I wanted a
yeah,
copy. And then I was in
yeah,
Belfast in one of the secondhand bookstores, and I went into the religious section, and then I find your book, and it's signed by you.
yeah. That's right. It was
It's
signed in
si-
Medjugorje.
it's signed by Medjugorje 2015. I said,
Yes.
"Huh." I was getting, and then I said, I just found your book in Belfast, and it's signed 2015 Medjugorje, and I found it in a secondhand bookstore in Belfast, and I paid
For £50.
£2.50. Yeah, but 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 that goes to show God's providence, Brian. That I,
Yeah,
our Lord, or heaven wanted me to have it, and I've been using it. Like you're talking about Mount Melleray. I met somebody that actually saw something during one of those apparitions in Mount Melleray many decades ago. So, like, the Irish bishops poo-poo down Irish
yeah,
apparitions. It's only knock, really.
yeah,
If some
yeah,
kids come and say, "Oh, we saw Our Lady," and then as I think you said, "Oh, no, you didn't. It's your imagination." So the Irish Church has been poo-pooing down our Blessed Mother for decades.
yeah,
It's only by the grace of God Knock got where it is, but everything else is.
yeah,
And Our Lady has been very active in Ireland, Brian. She's been constantly insisting,
yeah,
in all of these locations. You have the map here. I do recommend get this book, Marian Apparitions in
yeah,
Ireland, Related Phenomenon, and you've done all the map of all the places. And
yeah,
this isn't exhaustive. I think you said there's a lot
yeah.
more than just this, right?
Yeah, I traveled through every county in Ireland in 1 year, just taking the pictures first.
Gosh.
So yeah, but you see, you're right. So Knock is the only recognised Irish apparition site, and as you say, that's because again, it seems to come down to a kind of self-confidence. The Archbishop of Tuam at the time was Archbishop McHale, and that guy was just stand up against the world. He was known as the Lion of Judah, and the Lion of the Fold of Judah, and he was just he'd stand up against anybody. So when he wanted his investigation, he was going to get that, and then it went through and he approved it. If you think about it, it does take self-confidence in a bishop to approve. But the Irish wouldn't be like that. Of course, the apparition would be laughed at by outsiders. Of course, it's going to be. And they just wouldn't stand against people laughing at them. That's the reality of it. It sounds terrible, but that's actually true. If you were to scratch the surface of your average Irish bishop, why don't they condemn this endless pride parades that go on and on and on and dominating the whole country? They wouldn't stand against this. It wouldn't be in their DNA.
No,
They just lack that kind of confidence. So
no.
that's
Yeah.
the element.
Yeah. But like, anyway, I think it's a fascinating conversation, and maybe this is the start of something. We should make a regular occurrence, and let people put their comments below. But Brian,
Yeah.
like, I do thank you for all of the work that you're doing, and the
Thank you.
publications.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think,
And say thank you for all your work. You're organising things endlessly, and it's great stuff. I go to about half now. I was in Derry, and it is good. It is good what you're doing. I very
Yeah.
much appreciate it. And it takes an awful lot of work to organise these things. As I say, I was just trying to organise something, helping organise thing in June there 4 weeks ago. And it's just, people not getting back to you. And, I'm thinking, how the heck do you ever stickers for all the stuff you organise? So well done
I
to you.
know, I know, but I think the faith is worth saving. Like it's both it's our common love to, because we've talked about this for so long. We can't just let this faith die. This truly beautiful. Um, I mean, it's so embedded in our culture, in our family, in our history. We can't just let it die. Uh, I mean, that would be such a tragedy for the next generation, you know?
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah,
And
yeah,
anyway,
so, yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
Brian,
that's what we want to become. We want to become as practical things that we can do now to revive the Catholic faith in Ireland. That's what
yeah,
we have to have. There has to be a meeting of minds. We have to find out how to do this because it has to
put
be
them
done.
put them put them below. Put your comments
Yeah,
below. And I do think the revival of the Mass, uh, is really central. Do you know? But how you do this without dividing the church, without creating division, is interesting. But the Mass has to return to its mystical. I mean, the Roman Rite was a very deep, profound mystical encounter. I mean, people don't realize this. And today we don't because we don't. People can't experience it. They don't know what they don't know. But you know, I I've nothing against the new lectionary. I'm fine if they wanted to expand the readings of the Mass. I'm okay with it. But the Holy Sacrifice. There's one good thing about modern Ireland, Brian, I'll say this. We have at least 70,000 Syro-Malabar Catholics coming into Ireland, which bring their own right, you know. And you will never see a Syro-Malabar priest just throw on a stole and concelebrate like this, like he just, landed in there and, a shabby thing. And, they don't do that. They don't do shabby masses at all. And it's ad orientem, it's reverent, it's serious, um, and the people that go to mass, they're very very serious Catholics. At least it'll shine the light on our shabbiness in the Irish mass, where the sense of mystery. It's a performance. It's not the sacrifice. It's you've lost the mystery of the holy sacrifice, the mass. It will drive over the next decade, a serious conversation, because the number two church in Ireland, soon happening very, very, very quickly, will be the Syro-Malabar Church in Ireland. And Catholics are going to see this. Oh, these guys, they prepare their altar. Oh, these guys, their priests are dressed properly. These guys, they say it's ad orientem. These guys take the Mass seriously. What happened to us Roman Catholics? We got rid of it. We destroyed our altars. We destroyed our sanctuaries. We destroyed our vestments. We destroyed tabernacles. And then we're looking around. We destroyed the religious instruction. Hold on a second. Like it will drive. I do think it's going to drive an awakening among. It has to, among Irish Catholics, because it's fast approaching. I know of Irish Catholics now that are going to the Syro-Malabar Mass in Malayalam language ahead of going to their local Novus Order, because they're singing something there, which is it's going to be interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but anyway,
Yeah. Mhm. And
okay.
then the other point about it, it's a sad point, but it's a point that should be made. That you hear about people like who survived the First World War, the Second World War, and those veterans tend to be, theists. They believe in God because it's simply very difficult times. In other
Yeah,
words, if you don't believe in Marian apparitions, beautiful things like that, you'll believe in the existence of evil. Unfortunately, sometimes people have to go through experiences, and one thing you'll believe there is such a thing as evil, and when you believe that, you move towards trying to find out what is the stuff
yeah,
to remedy that, God, and
yeah,
unfortunately, it looks a lot like we're going to enter into times like that, and
yeah,
that'll bring people back to the church in kind of a way. It's sad, but I
yeah,
think that could happen too.
yeah. Yeah. Well, look, pray for it, and fascinating conversation. And that Franciscan monk, the Capuchin monk that you mentioned, with the miracle in Cologne, his name was, again, remind me of his name.
His name was also Lavalin, the same as the general,
Oh, okay.
Lavallin. But he took
Okay.
the first name Francis in the church. Sometimes
Okay.
he's known as Father Francis, but he was also Lavalin. And he was from Dysart on the shores of Loch Lomond. And
Okay.
the book is by FX Martin and Friar Nugent. Yeah,
Okay.
great book.
That's great. I was fascinated by the link to Malachi Martin and his brother.
Yeah.
That was something that fascinated me. I didn't know that. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thanks,
yeah.
Brian.
Right, thanks for having yourself. Thank you very much. Good
God
meeting
bless.
you.
Bye.
Yeah.